I'll start off by taking a few selected examples from different areas. I just want to bring two things. The importance of microcontroller in today's scenario, what it can do, and in what all ways it can make a difference to the product. I feel that will provide enough motivation for a person to understand microcontroller, its working, and see whether you can use it for X, Y, Z applications. I have taken the first example as current measurement in HT lines. I'll repeat whatever is given there so you can only listen. Now, the need here, as far as the current measurement goes, the need here is to know what is the power that is transmitted in the high tension line, and then coordinate power flow in the grid. If you take a country like India, possibly which has a very big and widely spread grid, there are maybe a few thousand power stations. All of them are connected through high tension power lines, crisscross, and power station at Paikara may generate some power. Other power station, NPTC power station, may generate something in Nagpur. How much of the power from Paikara should go to this place? How much of the other power from the other station go to a separate place? All these they have to continuously decide, they have to distribute. And depending on the load conditions and the economics associated with individual power stations, a decision has to be taken on a continuous basis. So the coordination of power flow in the grid, that has to be done. That also requires the power to be measured on a continuous basis. Then there are a number of commercial transactions that go with it, like the payment to be made to the power station, the payment to be extracted from a consumer, and whether the daytime, nighttime, evening, etc. There are different rates available, and different consumers having different rates at which they are paying. See, I will have some installed capacity. I will have some capacity which I have told as the capacity, minimum power that I want from the supplier, and I will say that I will maintain so much of power factor. Considering all this, there are clear-cut rates provided for HT consumers. So all these commercial transactions are to be taken care of. Over and above all this, protection. When you say high tension line, it may go up to 800 kV. In a DC case, it may go to 800 kV. With 800 kV line, if there is a line snapping or if there is short circuit, you can imagine the chaos that will create. A huge amount of power flow will be there for a short time, and there will be a power outage. So this has to be clearly identified, localized, and then corrective action taken. All these things require a clear-cut measurement of current in the high tension line. Now it has been taking place maybe for the last 50-60 years in a very comfortable manner. But the point is, this current measurement is a very costly affair. If you take a current measurement with a meter or a tabletop meter in today's condition, an ammeter which measures current, it may cost 200 rupees. You just go to the market, pay 200 rupees, you get an excellent meter to measure current. You can put it on the table and measure. It gives an accuracy of maybe 0.2%. But when it comes to measurement in current in a high tension line, the insulation becomes crucial. The meter costs only 200 rupees, but insulation that you have to provide for safety of people, etc., all these things will add to the cost. The total measurement cost may be anything up to 1 lakh. So you can imagine the purpose that it serves and what all ways you have to protect and do the provision. Now, this insulation between the primary and secondary terminals has to be done in a very, very elaborate and well-ordered manner, which adds to the cost substantially. I have shown a scheme here. Whereby, tick it on. Point wrong. Purple and purple. No problem. We can go here and find out. There's a stick here, long stick here. Okay. I've shown a typical scheme here. This is the high tension line, typically 400 kV line. There's a current transformer, and the measurement is to be done on this side. In a conventional system, the insulation between the high tension line and the current transformer that provides insulation. Lesser point problem. Okay. Now here, the present scheme that I propose here, okay, this is now in practice. It is something like this. You have got a current transformer. You have got a necessary processing block here. You have got the power supply to this. This is a small battery backup. That may be typically like the ICAD cell type of battery backup here. That's a microcontroller. And there's a data transmitter. This whole block is called a transmitter block. That is kept at the high tension end, at the power line end. It is kept as a small box somewhere mounted very close to the high tension line. Then there's a plastic fiber optic cable. That cable may be from the high tension line, it will go down to the ground level. And at the ground level, there's another receiver block that is kept. Now here, the present case, you don't have to provide much of insulation between primary and secondary because this whole thing is at the high tension end. This fiber optic cable, which is a plastic cable, that provides all the insulation. This fiber optic cable may cost something like 10 rupees, 20 rupees per meter. So the whole scheme, number one, cost is very low compared to the conventional scheme. It is equally robust and maybe much more sophisticated. It has become possible with the availability of very effective microcontrollers. The fiber optic cable essentially does data transmission. That means the current that you are measuring, you have to convert into a digital data stream, make it available at the fiber optic cable, and it will couple that information and transmit it. At the other end, the same fiber optic cable will deliver this data at the receiver end. From that, the current value has to be extracted by the microcontroller there and given a necessary, provide display or make it available for various other functional activities. Now, I'll just briefly explain what all the scheme comprises of. At the transmitter end, there's a microcontroller. The microcontroller, it converts the current into a bit stream at regular intervals. It will measure the current, convert to a bit stream. Again, after 10 milliseconds, it may measure the current, convert to another bit stream, and so on. It will couple it to the fiber optic cable. The power for that is provided by a rechargeable battery, and the energy for that essentially comes from the high tension mains. You don't have to provide any separate power supply to that unit at all. That for the high tension itself, by some coupling, low coupling, you can provide the necessary power, you can provide the recharging. The whole thing will stand there as a standalone unit for years together without any personal attention. I can continue like this, okay? Okay. At the receiver end, the fiber optic cable provides the data as a bit stream. The microcontroller will accept that. It will convert into corresponding sample sequences, current values at regular intervals. It will convert this bit stream into current values, and then it will provide the necessary display. Just as you have a display with many other instruments, it will display the current value. And maybe there may be because the microcontroller is available, you can make it do a number of additional tasks. You can provide the basic scheme. You can build a scheme around a microcontroller. It does the current measurement and conversion to current value. Having done that, anyway the microcontroller is available, you can ask it to do 100 odd things. For this purpose, at the low tension end, there should be a separate power supply. microcontrollers. A typical microcontroller of the type that we discuss here, it may cost 100 rupees. There's a microcontroller at either end. What is the microcontroller to do? It is decided well in advance. Beforehand it is decided. It is fully implemented. It does not require any control, any adjustment, no selection, no setting, nothing. It is simply a blind operation. The whole operation is blind. Set once for all, fully programmed, and it will operate. Now, the microcontroller is said to be fully embedded. You just understand the term. There's a microprocessor. Essentially, there's a computer that is sitting inside. There's a computer that is sitting inside at either end. The computer is in continuous operation, but the computer is not visible. I always, I quote the case. It is like the old conventional house in India, where the youngest daughter-in-law may be always sitting in the kitchen, and maybe day and night she'll be preparing that dough for dosha or idli. Where, whenever somebody comes there, she'll be continuously doing the grinding. Nobody knows that the daughter-in-law exists. Nobody knows what she's doing. She's always in the kitchen preparing the dough. It is something like that. It is something like a daughter-in-law. It does the continuous operation always without opening the mouth, fully dedicated. It's a full-fledged computer inside, but it doesn't tom and say, I'm a computer here. In that sense, it is fully embedded. It is fully pre-programmed. That's why it's a blind operation. No program, nothing is required. You don't realize a computer working. To that extent, it is fully pre-programmed. As I told you, there is no computer visible anywhere. I have taken another example. Infrared thermometry. For temperatures in the range that we normally work with, 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 100 degrees, 500 degrees, etc. You have got contact thermometers, you have got thermocouples, you have got various types of thermometers. But when you go for temperatures in the 800, 900 degrees Celsius range or higher, you don't get proper thermocouples. Maybe platinum, rhodium or similar thermocouples. You touch, measure the temperature, take out. After 5 seconds it will just melt off. It's very cost. One measurement may cost 5,000 rupees. But now they are available. A few years back even that was not available. So for such high temperature measurements, there is no measurement available. More often, I have worked in a steel plant, so I know some of things going on. More often that operator, the blast furnace operator, you ask him, what's the temperature? You look up and say it is 5,500 degrees. The figure that he gives is as good as what God Almighty will give. You don't know on what basis he is saying. He feels something, look at it and says that this is the temperature. That's a type of reliability that goes with temperature at that range. Those days, possibly, there was only one thermometer called a disappearing filament pyrometer. Now, it is something like this. There's a fine tungsten filament through which you pass a current. If you change the current, the tungsten filament will it will go very, very dull red, then maybe bright red, then yellow or something. The temperature, the color will change as you increase the current through the filament. It's a round filament. Now, within that filament area, you have, suppose I want to observe the furnace temperature, I have a telescopic scheme by which I look at the furnace through the telescope. I can see the furnace, whether it is red and all that. This filament will just appear around that. That is, the furnace temperature. The furnace temperature will be shown in an area like this. Around that, the filament will lie. The filament will lie around this. When I see it through the telescope, I can see the filament around. I can see the furnace area. This may be having some red color. I continuously change the current until the filament simply disappears. The filament disappears means the filament color and the furnace, whatever color you are seeing, they match. Am I clear? When they match, the filament temperature is same as the furnace temperature. At that time, I note the current through the filament. And then the manufacturer has given me a chart. If this is the current, that's the temperature. Use that chart and make a judgment of the temperature. The temperature that you can sense with that may be correct within maybe 50 degrees. 50 degrees Celsius, maybe the order of accuracy you will get with disappearing filament. Type of thermometer, that requires a bit of expertise to work with that and gauge the temperature. And with the many operators in furnaces, it may be a small affair, but they will not easily tell others how to do it. It's a very difficult job. They will not easily tell you how to do this. All these are going with that. Now, with today's technology, this, disappearing filament temperature, the thermometer has simply disappeared. You will find only in, some old laboratories or museum. So the whole activity, it has disappeared. Now, the essential use is in hazardous environments or sources which are too hot to be touched. With radiation pyrometry, that is possible today. It has become possible with the availability of microcontrollers. The principle is, you sense radiation from the source from which you have to measure the temperature. You sense the radiation. You put a sensor radiation, and based on the radiation, you ascertain what's the temperature. You have got the equation for the black body radiation. See, that gives the ratio of radiations at two wavelengths. So you have got the equation for black body radiation. Here, the number of things come into picture. Okay, I think I'll spend a few minutes on this. Here, lambda 1 is one wavelength, W1 is the intensity of radiation at that wavelength. So the intensity of radiation at two wavelengths, that ratio is a function of the wavelengths lambda 1 and lambda 2 in this manner. Poor term temperature comes somewhere here. C2 is a constant that is known. So the principle is, you select two radiation frequencies, two lambdas, and get the values of W1 and W2, get that ratio, use this equation and compute temperature. Now, this computation definitely requires a computer, because you have to compute and make it available then and there. So it requires a computer. The basic job of the microcontroller is to convert the values of, using lambda 1, lambda 2, W1, W2, etc. and get the value of the temperature. Now here there are few other issues coming into picture. Firstly, the emissivity of the source comes into picture. Depending on the source, the emissivity may change. Then the medium absorption characteristics. Say, typically, if you have got water vapor, it will absorb radiation at a particular frequency. Simply the radiation will disappear. And depending on the amount of water vapor, the amount of radiation also will change. The change in the field of view of the sensor, if the total available area that is available to you, aperture, if it increases or decreases, the amount of radiation received will change. Then, as far as the sensor is concerned, it will have one sensitivity. If I take one sensor from a batch, it will have one sensitivity. Same batch, if I take another sensor, the sensitivity may be up or down by 10%, 15%. So the repeatability is not very high. Now, this method so far has essentially been of academic interest. You know that it's possible, but it's far from reliable. But the advent of microcontroller has changed the scene radically. You select two lambdas, lambda 1, lambda 2. You have sensors. One sensor tuned to lambda 1, another sensor tuned to lambda 2. Get the necessary radiation W1, W2. C2 is a known constant. Use all this and compute the temperature. A typical scheme is shown here. Okay, these meters are available today. There are specific companies which do this and market. See here, you have got 4 sensors. You have got 4 sensors, TA, TB, TC, TD. This TA is a sensor exposed to the source and senses the radiation at lambda 1. TA senses the radiation at lambda 1. TB is also tuned to lambda 1, but it's a blind sensor. It is not exposed to the source. So it will do compensation for ambient temperature and similar variations. So TA and TB together give net radiation at lambda 1. I hope I'm clear. Is all right? TA and TB together give the net radiation at lambda 1. Okay. Similarly, TC and TD together, they will give you the net radiation at lambda 2. So using this TA, TB, you have to get W1, the radiation at frequency lambda 1. Similarly, TC and TD, you have to get radiation at lambda 2. There's an AD converter block, so you will get this signal, convert to digital number. You have to get the next signal, convert to digital number, and so on. All the four of them, you have to convert to digital numbers. So the microcontroller will give the command. First it will give a command, take a reading from TA. That reading will be converted to digital form and given to the microcontroller. Then it will give a command, take a reading from TB. That will be taken, again given to the microcontroller, and so on. Cyclically, all the four, through commands, you take one to switch on SA, do this, SB, do this, SC, then SD, take all this, bring it to a microcontroller, do the computation, and give the necessary display. So when you do the measurement with SA, there can be error due to ambient temperature variation, you compensate using SB. SB is a blind sensor. You get SA minus SB, the net radiation, which will give you the radiation for lambda 1. Similarly at lambda 2. So the microcontroller oversees the complete operation of the AD converter. It computes the temperature and displays it. Again, as far as the microcontroller working goes, there's one microcontroller. There's no adjustment anywhere, no settings. There's no human interaction. You cannot easily bungle the measurement. It's a blind operation. Intensive computation is involved. Compared with the earlier case was comparatively simple. Here, intensive computation is involved. Still, the computer remains embedded. If you consider the complexity is much more here. The hardware, there may be, there are two microcontrollers, but here the complexity is much more. But still the computer is embedded. I've taken another example, which we know very well. I have not got into great details. As that of a calculator. A typical calculator has 15 to 20 keys. Any key you press, the calculator has to respond. It functions in a pre-programmed manner. I want to do addition, I put a number, it displays. I put 2 digits, it displays a number. And I say addition, it does addition. So in a pre-programmed manner, well-defined manner, the calculator operates. And it displays the results. Just as shown examples. You press a number key, the calculator interprets it as a decimal digit. You press 2, 3 number keys, the calculator interprets it as a decimal number. The other one case it is digit, the other case it is interpreted as a number. You press that plus key, the calculator interprets that as a, look, I am going to give a second number. You put equal to, it just adds up the two and just gives you the result. So the whole activity is pre-programmed. There is a microcontroller that is built in. There are set of programs that is built in within the system. There is a program to identify what is the key that is pressed. There is a program to shift out the digits, whether 0 is pressed, 1 is pressed, equal to is pressed, and so on. Whether it's a function or a digit. There is a program which will identify a number sequence, a digit sequence, and interpret it as a number. A program to display different quantities, etc., etc. All these are available. Over and above all these programs, there is a supervisory program which runs the overall program. As far as the response goes, I perceive, when I work with the calculator, I perceive that the calculator responds immediately. I press a key, I get a display. I think it is not like that. See, as far as my response time goes, I press something, I see a response within a matter of maybe 1 second, I feel that is responding immediately. For the microcontroller inside, it can do 1 million operations before responding to that. So for the microcontroller that may be working inside, it is not immediate response. For the operator, it is immediate response. It is essentially called real-time operation. For the use concerned, if you are able to service an activity at the rate that the user demands, the user says, you do it immediately to me. Immediately you do this action for me. You are able to satisfy the user as far as his requirements or immediate needs are concerned. It is a real-time operation. But for that microcontroller, it can do 100 odd things and do that. It is something like, Vishwanathan Anand playing chess with 4 people. He'll go to one board, make a movement. Next board, movement. Like that he may go on doing. For the other person, Vishwanathan Anand is playing. Okay, I feel that he's playing with me. Sumar feels that he's playing with him. He is able to do that multi-time activity. So it is a real-time activity. As far as Anand is concerned, it is not real-time. For the user, it is real-time. A calculator, a microcontroller does essentially a real-time activity. It is highly interactive. The early 2 examples, there is no interaction. They are blind operations. They are set once and they operate. Here, it is interactive. So the microcontroller function is entirely, there is a new dimension to the whole activity. But the whole activity is fully structured and interaction is limited. Okay, it is not very exhaustive. There is a limited interaction, well-defined interaction, and there is no room for any change from that. There is no big, high-tech decision that is involved. Okay, you just take a calculator, give it to a first-standard fellow. In a matter of 5 minutes, he knows how to operate. It doesn't require any elaborate training for the operation. I have taken one more example here, that of a cash register. That is a point of sale terminal. You know that a cash register typically has a number keys, typically calculator keys, then number of function keys, like you total amount, or one entry you have made, you have to abort the entry, or you refresh. You provide do the billing. There is 10 entries you have made, it does the individual calculations, and you just give a press a key, it will prepare the bill. It has to have a printer interface, it has to do tiering. That is, you have got 1, 2, 3, 4 items put on the weighing machine. Before putting on the 5th machine, you press a key, then it shows 00 weight, you put the next item. Then that item it has to weigh, it has to bill, and so on. All these facilities are built in. It is something more than a calculator. It has essentially 2 modes of operation. You observe it very carefully. One is for the operator. The operator will be essentially handling the items and preparing the bill. He will not do anything else. Over and above that, it will have a supervisory mode, which we don't come across normally. That should be a secure mode, where the supervisor at some time, he can come, put a password, enter the mode, he can change the item. Okay, instead of banana, it is mango, or instead of this mango, it is that mango. He can just go on adding items, deleting items. He can change the rates. He can get, if it is a organized system, he can get the latest stock. He can close the account for the day. Number of things can be built up around a point of sale terminal. Now all these are under the supervisory or secure mode, whereas the operator mode has only limited facilities. An operator, once again here, a first standard boy may not be able to operate. It requires some amount of training. Minimal training is required. And the system is much more sophisticated than the earlier ones. There has to be a continuous communication with the weighing machine, with the printer. The operation, once again, is in real time. As far as the operator is concerned, he presses a key, he wants a response. He presses the bill is made available. Once again, the operation is in real time. It is smart operation. It is user-friendly operation. It is highly interactive. A calculator is interactive in some sense. This is highly interactive. It is much more than a calculator. So I have taken 4 examples. I have taken a cross section. I have taken 4 examples. All these examples come under the category of what is called embedded applications. That's the scope of what we would like to discuss in our course here. Typically, a PC, a personal computer, it offers various platforms, word processing, Visual Basic, Excel, etc. etc. There are platforms around which you build up applications. And around the platform, user builds an application and works with that. You can do computation, elaborate computation you can do. It is rich in functions and interactions. All these are built into a personal computer. But unlike this, an embedded microcontroller based system has none of this. There is no application platform. There is no application, no word processing, no Visual Basic, none of that is available here. There is no platform. User does not have any program. The operation requires minimal skill. A PC operation requires a lot of skill. You should know how to work with that. Okay, even otherwise we do bungling. But to work with that, you should know the in and out of at least the interface well. Here, all that is not required. The whole activity that you expect of the microcontroller has to be well planned, well thought out and organized in advance. Once you set it, you cannot change it easily. So it has to be well thought out. It is pre-programmed. At the manufacturing stage itself, the full program is written in every one of the devices that we discussed, like the calculator, the cash register, or the HT current measurement, or the thermometer. All that we discussed, the full program is thought out, planned, prepared at the initial design stage, and written once for all. There is no program, no further change. This is called firmware. You are familiar with hardware, you are familiar with software. By software, in today's scenario, by software we mean something which you just do, change, add, etc. etc. Firmware is software that is written at the manufacturing stage and frozen. There are many companies, you say, what are you doing? I am in firmware area. That means I am doing something for cell phone or something for calculator, etc. I do the program which is written once for all. It has got its own area, slot for working. Now, what is it that is called for in an operation like this? You should have expertise in microcontroller systems. It involves, number one, your understanding of microcontroller. What is the scope of its hardware? What is it can do software-wise? Your understanding of that. Then, a number of peripherals will go with that. We'll just go through all this. Typically, peripherals are ports, timers, ADCs, communication. Having gone through all this, become familiar with that, there's a development platform available. That is your whole microcontroller. Working with that, you understand, do the program, development, everything. All that is available around a PC. So, one needs to understand the microcontroller hardware and software facilities and peripherals. Second aspect is to work with the development platform and just do the necessary software and associated activities. Having done that, a procedure typically will be, you identify the needs of an application, you relate it with the microcontroller facilities. Okay, this application requires a port to be used, or a timer to be used, or two timers to be used, and so on. To identify what are the requirements of the application, and you relate to what is the facility available. Based on that, you select a MUSI. In fact, that itself is half the job. If you take something like the PIC series which you are going through, then maybe I think, I don't know, 50, 60, 100, 100 of them are there? Do I happen? Maybe. So, 100 microcontrollers, okay, provided by PIC. So, you select 1, 2, 3 or 56 one for an application which is best suited for that. So, that is half the job. Then, you decide whether any other hardware is required. Maybe some LED 1 key or etc. etc. What is required, you have to decide. Do the necessary software, that is firmware, for the system. That is coming under the scope of a microcontroller system designer. So the expertise you have to pick up is the hardware with the instruction of the software and the necessary development platform. Having done that, you have to just understand the user requirements and translate into what is required of the system. Today's condition, the career in embedded systems, it requires expertise in application of microcontroller. ID is the integrated development environment. You have to skillfully intertwine the two for a solution. Whenever you offer a solution, you offer a one-up solution and you excel through that. Typically what you see with a cell phone today, I do something, you do something more, and somebody else does something more, all with one microcontroller inside. Typically in an application, the microcontroller may be active maybe for 30% of the time for doing the function that is expected of that is providing cell phone activity. Rest of the time or the facility available is simply idling. Since it is idling facility, I offer something more and tell the customer, look, I am giving this free or giving it as a small extra cost. Somebody else has something else. I say I provide a camera. Somebody else says a camera with facility for a short movie. Somebody else says I am providing with music. All with the same hardware, you go on providing. So whatever somebody does, you do something more and give that personal touch. That makes a difference to the whole thing. That's all. This is the first lecture over.